For today's video lesson, we are looking at linear relationships. Again, this is our unit that we're currently studying, and we're looking at slope-intercept form on graphs. As the essential question indicates here, how do we write a slope-intercept form equation for a line on a graph? Please take a moment to copy the topic and essential question into your header along with today's date, set up your question column and your note column, and resume the video when you're ready to begin. So, per usual, we'll start out talking about some vocabulary. So the slope-intercept form is this equation right here, y equals mx plus b. This is one form of an equation that we write for linear relationships. It's the main one that we focus on in 8th grade, and it's named for the fact that it includes the slope, the m value, so m represents slope, and the y-intercept, the b value. In class, we've made foldables before. This is kind of a simplified version of that. So here's our equation in slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. And when we're writing these equations from a line on a graph, we're looking for two things. We're looking for what is the slope of the line, so we can plug that into the equation, and what is the y-intercept? Where does the line cross the y-axis? We can find this at 0, b, and b is representing whatever that value is where it crosses the y-axis, because the y-axis, when we're on that line, x is 0. So whenever you see the x-coordinate 0, you know that you're looking at something that's on the y-axis. So that might make a little more sense as we get into it. So without further delay, make sure that you have this copied into your notes, and we're going to look at the graphs. So here we are at our first example, this one with a positive slope. Remember, it's increasing, it starts low and it increases. That's how we know it has a positive slope. I've gone ahead and labeled a few points here so that you can copy this into your notes. And again, please make sure you have your x-axis, your y-axis, your line going exactly through these points, and so that we can have as precise of examples as possible in your notes to refer back to. The first thing I want you to do is think back. Can you remember how to find the slope of this line, or really any line, right? And up here in our notes, we talked about how slope is the change in y over change in x, or sometimes referred to as rise over run. But I just want you to take a couple minutes and maybe pause the video here and see if you can calculate the slope of this line. If you said that the slope of this line was 2/3, I would agree with you. We look between points and we see that it rises 2, that's why the numerator is 2, and it runs 3. So what we're talking about tonight is how to find the second part of this equation, the y-intercept. So really all we have to do is look at where this line crosses the y-axis. And we see that happening right here. So this green line, our positive slope line, is crossing, it intersects right at 5. Notice how we talked about here, 0, 5, 0 as an ordered pair tells us that we're on the y-axis because x is 0 all the way along this y-axis. So when x is 0, that value tells us what our y-intercept is, and we can see it right here on the graph. So we just need to say that our y-intercept is 5. So I'm filling that in here. And now we have enough information to write our equation. We just use the y equals m, which is what this fraction bar is here for our slope value, times x plus whatever our b value is. So let's fill that in, and that's our equation. This line is written as y equals 2/3 x plus 5. Let's try our next example. We're going to go ahead and follow that same process. So we have our line here, which is our example of a negative slope. It starts in the upper left-hand corner, starts high on the left-hand side. As we read it, it decreases. The y values are dropping, which makes it this downward slope, telling us that it's negative. We have our points marked. You can clearly see our y-axis and our x-axis. So I'll give you a moment to set that up and draw it into your notes, please. And go ahead and see if you can find the slope and the y-intercept, and let's check back when you're ready. All right, let's check in. How'd you do? Well, if we look, I used these 2 points here, -8, 5, and -4, 2. I noticed it dropped 3, so it has a change in y of -3. It ran 4, had a horizontal x change of 4, so my slope is -3/4. And now I just need to find my y-intercept. So again, I'm looking for where does the line cross the y-axis, and I see that happening right here, where the y-axis is -1, the line goes right through it, so that is my y-intercept. Again, we see the ordered pair 0, -1, so when x is 0, y is -1, which tells me that is the value where it crosses the y-axis if I'm just looking at an ordered pair. And I can fill in my y-intercept, and we're ready to complete our equation. So here's our equation, y equals -3/4 x plus a -1, right, where we substituted in -3/4 for our m value and -1 for our b value. But do you notice anything about this equation, how we might be able to simplify it? Well, everything is technically correct here. This would be an acceptable answer, y equals -3/4 times x plus a -1. But you might remember from 7th grade where we talk about too many symbols get messy. So if we're adding a -1, that's the same as just saying subtract 1. So I've rewritten the equation again down here as y equals -3/4 x minus 1. So that would still tell me that this -1 is where my line crosses the y-axis, and it simplifies my equation. So whether you're writing it or you're reading an equation that somebody else has written and you're trying to interpret it, you might see it written this way, and it's more oftentimes the common way to write it when you're looking at an equation where you have to maybe go the other way and look at an equation and create the graph. So I just want you to start getting in the habit of seeing that. I myself will accept both of these answers, but this would be the most simplified form of that equation. For this line, so this line is represented by the equation y equals -3/4 x minus 1. So this is going to conclude our video. At this point, the last thing to do is for you to write a summary of the notes by answering our essential question from the beginning of our video. How do we write a slope-intercept form equation for a line on a graph? And we'll continue to practice this in class.